Books are wonderful. I'm going to prove it to you now by reading you some very nifty stories that'll take you to all sorts of places. So join me and relax while I read you some wonderful, wonderful stories.
29 years is a long time for any show to last on air, and yet Captain Kangaroo managed to do it.
This is a day I've been waiting for a long time.
The show aired from 1955 to 1984, making it the longest running children's show of its time by far. Right now, it's the second longest running children's television show ever made and is only surpassed by Sesame Street. For a show to last for that long, it probably had some dark secrets that no one knew about.
That's exactly what I mean. In fact, today we're going to do all that and more. And this is definitely not a bored, nothing to do day.
And those dark secrets are precisely what this video will be about. What made Captain Kangaroo last for so long on TV? Why was the show so uniquely successful? And what were the secrets the show tried to keep under wraps throughout its 29 years of being on air? Let's find out. To start with, let's look at Captain Kangaroo itself. What was the show about? Well, the premise of the show is pretty simple. It was loosely about the close relationship that children had with their grandparents. In the show, Bob Keeshan played the titular Captain Kangaroo character. One interesting fact about this show that very few people know is that the first choice for hosting the show wasn't Bob Keeshan. Instead, when the show was in its planning phase, the showrunners had planned to go with Al Lewis. However, at the time, Lewis was hosting a pretty popular children's show and the network he was with refused to release him from his contract. Thankfully, Bob Keeshan had no such commitment. By the time he was hired for the show, Bob was just coming off another show called Howdy Doody. In that show, Bob played a character named Clarabelle the Clown. The character was a silent august clown who communicated by honking several horns attached to a belt around his waist. One honk meant yes, two meant no. While Bob wasn't extraordinarily popular for playing that role, the role attested to his talent as an actor and someone in tune with his comedic instincts. The only reason why he eventually left the show is that he disagreed with his partner in the show, Buffalo Bob Smith. For some, that misunderstanding could have been a red flag, since Bob immediately hired a new agent for himself and other workers on the show. Some networks might have been wary of hiring Bob after that show because it meant that he could screw up their production too and take workers from their show. But the showrunners of Captain Kangaroo didn't think of that, and that turned out to be a great choice. In 1993, Keeshan participated in congressional hearings against video game violence. Before that, he was also a powerful voice against shows that didn't teach children about the real world. According to him, such shows were merely for entertainment and did nothing about the education of children, which was meant to be a huge part of programs that targeted children. All of this and more was what made fans adore him. In 1981, after he suffered a near heart attack, Keeshan got thousands of good wishes from his fans. He eventually had to go through a triple bypass surgery to stay alive, and throughout that process, thousands of adults and children who'd fallen in love with Captain Kangaroo stayed by his side, wishing him all the best. While Bob Keeshan was indeed loved by all and sundry when he was alive and during the Captain Kangaroo show, it may appear that that love was a little misplaced, especially if the new dark secrets about the Captain Kangaroo show and the behavior of Bob Keeshan on the show turned out to be real. If these new accusations are real, it could very well be the biggest scandal surrounding a TV show host since the Bill Cosby situation. But before we talk about these new revelations, let's look at the show itself and talk about what made it so great. After all, the dark secrets that the show holds don't take away from the fact that it made thousands of children happy for nearly 3 decades. And what was the ingredient of this successful run by the show? Well, since Bob Keeshan was the only constant, it may appear that it was indeed him. Anyway, the show itself was pretty flexible and was only loosely based around a few important things. The first staple of the show was the treasure house. It was the stage for the show, and it was where almost everything that happened in the show happened.
Happy Saturday to you. Welcome to Saturday Treasure House.
Aside from the presence of Captain Kangaroo and the treasure house, the show didn't have anything that resembled a format. Everything about it could change from time to time, and that included the opening sequence of the show. The show's format was so irregular that people genuinely had a hard time figuring out what was next with it.
Good morning, Captain.
Good morning, Captain! Good morning!
Most of the show followed the activities of Captain Kangaroo as he came to the treasure house, told stories, met guests, and indulged in silly stunts with regular characters. A few seasons into the show, the treasure house was renamed the Captain's Place, but a lot of people still stuck with the name Treasure House. At the time that the show was being premiered, it had competition from other children's shows with the same format. While it would be wrong to call that era of television the children's era, it's quite vital to know that children's shows hosted by a single character were quite popular at the time. In fact, on the first day of Captain Kangaroo, another children's show too was making its debut. The name of that show was The Mickey Mouse Club. Both shows premiered on that day, but on different networks. So, what is the dark secret of this show that could only be told after the show had been over for decades, and Bob Keeshan himself had long passed on? Bob's dark secret. Well, this secret had to do with Bob Keeshan's behavior with his on-screen sidekick, Mr. Green Jeans. And yes, Mr. Green Jeans wore green jeans, because what's the point if he doesn't? Anyway, here's the thing. According to a book by longtime CBS stage manager Daniel B. Morgan, Bob Keeshan used to do something peculiar before going on stage. And by peculiar, we mean something extremely weird and probably illegal in some states. He used to show Mr. Green Jeans what was in his pants. That's right, you're hearing me correctly. Your ears aren't deceiving you.
Oh, come on, this is ridiculous. What are we going to do? I can't be a telephone. I don't even have my own number or anything.
According to Daniel Morgan, this wasn't just a one-time or two-time thing. It wasn't just a result of a drunken fit by Bob Keeshan. It was something that he did every time. And like with stories like this, it does get worse. How much worse? Well, here's the thing. It appears that Mr. Green Jeans, whose real name was Hugh Brennan, didn't love this. But he endured and endured and endured till he simply couldn't endure anymore. He had to do something back, and that's precisely what he did. After a long day of shooting, Hugh decided that he would show Bob who was truly boss. While Bob was behind the stage, going over his lines again and reading his final voiceover, Hugh came over and did the most extraordinary thing. He decided to pee on Bob's legs.
If you think the place looks terrible on the outside, you should see it on the inside.
Whoa. Morgan doesn't talk a lot about Bob's reaction after that in his book, but we kind of wish we were there. Yes, we know it's somehow disgusting and weird and horrible and lots and loads of other synonyms. But can you imagine the shock on Bob's face when he saw Hugh walking over to him with a huge smirk on his face and then proceeding to urinate on his legs? It would have been pure horror and possibly comedic gold. Okay, let's be serious here. This may not sound like a big deal because it's been so long ago. And Bob Keeshan never did this in front of any kids, but that doesn't mean it's not messed up. Flashing someone, in whatever form, without their consent is harassment, and it sucks that Bob Keeshan, one of the biggest TV stars of his time, engaged in that act. Now, does this make Bob Keeshan a horrific person? We suppose that's up to you to decide, but there are a few things you should keep in mind when making that decision. The first is that there were hardly any kids on set when Bob Keeshan did this. Yes, that may make you think that this isn't as serious as we're making it out to be, and that's fair, but here's another thing to consider. Keeshan hosts a children's TV show. Think about your kids if you have one, or your future kids if you ever plan on having one. Would you ever want them to watch a children's show hosted by a TV host that flashes his co-host? Probably not. But again, times have changed. And who knows, maybe flashing was an acceptable pastime in the 80s. You can never really tell, can you? In any case, Captain Kangaroo and Bob Keeshan are now relics of the past, and the accusations of Morgan's books may not carry as much weight today as they would have done maybe 30 years ago. Perhaps we should just let sleeping dogs lie, or what do you think?